Good afternoon. My name is Larry Ray. I'm the President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc. I'm here to tell you today that American Manganese could possibly bring in the lowest cost electrolytic manganese metal mine in North America. It'll be the first one in the past few decades. What is manganese? Well, you can't have a steel industry without manganese. If you don't have manganese, you don't have steel. If you don't have steel, the world stops. North America has no manganese. We depend on our neighbors and other countries to import our manganese, and it just doesn't make any sense we don't exploit the resources in our own country. So I'm here to tell you that we are moving ahead with the feasibility study, we're moving ahead with the environmental studies, and we're moving ahead with a massive drill program in order to build the American Manganese, Inc. into the first primary electrolytic manganese producer in the United States. Please visit our website at americanmanganeseinc.com or call us at 604-531-9639. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Money and Wealth Show. I'm Sterling Fox. Our special guest this week is British Columbia Premier Gordon Campbell. Premier, in our last segment talking about the HST, I talked about the emotional backlash that you've received since the implementation of this tax. A lot of British Columbians, sir, frankly feel lied to. Yep. It wasn't discussed much during the last provincial election, and within 3 days of achieving a majority government, again, you're implementing this unheard of, undiscussed tax. And people, of course, go poof in a cloud of anger.
And I totally understand that. And so what actually happened in the election was I don't recall ever being asked about the HST in the election. And the reason was it wasn't anywhere on our plate. We actually had some questionnaires come in. I think there were 2 questionnaires come in. We said, no, we're not considering HST. It is not part of our platform. Here's why. No flexibility. British Columbia can't set their own tax rate, etc. So we're not considering it. That's what we said. That was in fact the case. What happened was not 3 days. It was quick, but it wasn't quite that quick. Okay. Nothing happened 3 days after the election. But what happened was we found that our revenues had fallen substantially. The provincial finance ministry did on the election day did a complete run of all of the revenues and the costs that they were anticipating, and came back and showed us that in fact our costs were going to be much higher. Revenues were down significantly, in spite of the fact we'd found lots. So I said, find out how we can meet our targets from the February budget. That's important to us. At the end of May, actually Minister Hansen came and said to me, they're doing this HST thing in Ontario. I'd like to hear what's going on. I'm going to talk to Minister Flaherty about that. I said, fine, do that. He did that and came back and said there's a couple of things that had changed. First, the $1.6 billion transition dollars that I talked to you about. Second, British Columbia could set its own rate. The reason we have the lowest rate in the country is because we can set our own rate. We were not aware of that prior to that. And thirdly, we had flexibility. So we have a made in British Columbia tax regime. For example, our motor fuel tax are not subject to HST.
As they are in Ontario.
As they will be in Ontario.
Sure, right.
So those were all important factors to us in terms of moving ahead, plus the $1.6 billion. Having said that, we did act very quickly. And we acted very quickly because if we didn't act, as I mentioned before, it was going to take us 2 years before we get back in the queue with the feds.
I guess the part that stretches the credibility is the fact that to harmonize a tax regime between a province and the feds is not something that happens on the basis of something scrawled on the back of a napkin.
Absolutely.
It would take negotiations that involve platoons of civil servants, months to organize.
Very, very good point. And that's exactly the point we're making about Ontario. Ontario had been doing that, had done all of that work. So when Colin went and talked with the Minister of Finance, he wanted to find out, are those things that they've done in Ontario, those applicable to British Columbia? Yes, was the answer. Obviously, we don't get the same transition funding as Ontario did because we've got about a third of the population. But yes, the transition funding was there, the flexibility was put in there, the ability to actually adjust the HST after 2 years was put in there. That had already been negotiated by Ontario. That's what allowed us to do this so quickly. And it's frankly what required us to do it quickly. We would have had a tax regime in British Columbia that was totally non-competitive in terms of major investments. Let me give you an example. In Kitimat, we're looking, or Rio Tinto Alcan is looking at a $2 billion investment. We now, because of the adoption of the HST, this is one of the most competitive places in the world to invest. We would not have been close to that had we been in the non-HST, PST world. And so one of the things that we know is, from the studies that have been done, we expect about 100,000 plus jobs over the next 10 years. We expect over $11 billion of additional investment. Not one of those jobs or one of those dollars of investment would have been coming had we maintained the PST.
Given that we're just constrained by time,
Sure.
and there's so much to talk about.
Sure.
Given the fact that the HST expands the old provincial sales taxable item
Right.
base,
Right.
had you considered dropping the rate to, say, a 10% HST to accommodate or to
Yeah.
make up for the fact that people are going to pay more tax on more items?
They're going to pay a little more tax on some items. What's really important is we could have previously, before the flexibility was built in by the federal government, we would have had to charge 13%. We actually came down to 12%. That actually cost the Treasury about $800 million. We actually have never done the HST as a way of generating additional revenues. So remember, in British Columbia, the average British Columbian has had a 37% reduction in their provincial income tax. Personal take-home pay has gone up over $10,000 over the last 8 or 9 years. Those are all important things, right? It's all part of the big picture. So that's why this year, for example, with our budget, you increase the personal income tax credit up to $11,000 from about $9,400. So you offset some of those additional costs, right? It's why we're providing $230 to over 1 million lower income British Columbians, because that actually will offset any of those additional costs. But they'll make their own choices. Buy more whole foods and less processed foods, you're not going to be affected by HST. Sell or buy a brand new home, no impact of HST.
Still a lot of conflicting opinions. For example, in the last few days, the Fraser Institute has issued a report saying the HST will benefit all British Columbians.
Right.
24 hours later, a report comes out from Statistics Canada that says,
Yeah.
well, maybe not.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people. It's very challenging for people, I understand this. There is not a credible economist in the country, or frankly around the world, who doesn't say EHST is a very positive step for a competitive, productive economy. It encourages investment.
You're watching the Money and Wealth Show. I'm Sterling Fox, joined this week by our very special guest, the Premier of British Columbia, the Honourable Gordon Campbell. Lots more to come, too. Please stay with us.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Ray. I'm the President and CEO of Gold Ray Resources Corp., a company that trades on the TSX Venture Exchange and has the majority of its operations in China. We are currently developing a resource there with limited production at this time. Our goal is to increase this production up to about 1,200 to 1,500 tons per day. And to do that, we are negotiating with several Chinese companies, one of which will become our partner either directly into the company or into the project, which will allow us to move the project up to the desired tonnage. For further information, please visit our website at goldray.com or phone 604-531-9639.